In the news tonight, a cabinet decision approves amendments to the penal code, repealing the controversial Article 308, under which rapists would walk free provided they marry their victims. Centrist Emmanuel Macron and far-right leader Marine Le Pen are set to face each other in a May 7 runoff for the French presidency after leading the first round of voting. And North Korea says it is ready to sink a U.S. aircraft carrier to demonstrate its military might as two Japanese Navy ships join a U.S. carrier group for exercises in the Western Pacific. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. The Cabinet has endorsed an amendment to the Penal Code, repealing the controversial Article 308, under which rapists could walk free as long as they married their victims. Under a previous amendment to Article 308, rapists, molesters, and individuals were spared punishment or legal prosecution if they married their victims and remained in the marriage for 3 years. Repealing the article came as part of recommendations proposed by the Royal Committee on Developing the Judiciary and Enhancing the Rule of Law. The Cabinet had endorsed the recommendations after the committee presented its report to His Majesty the King. Other amendments to the Penal Code introduced tougher penalties on violations of public money as well as on the use of firearms during celebrations, among other offences such as riots at sports events and violent protests. The lower house of Parliament, meanwhile, referred 11 draft laws on enhancing the judiciary performance to the House Legal Committee. The bills also came as part of the Royal Committee recommendations on developing the judiciary and enhancing the rule of law. The committee was named by His Majesty King Abdullah in 2016 and was tasked with preparing a strategy to address the challenges facing judicial reform. The strategy proposes a set of policies and executive programs as well as 14 draft laws. House Speaker Atif Tarawne chaired the session with the Prime Minister and Cabinet members in attendance. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki urged ministries and other public entities to abide by an executive order issued by the Independent Election Commission, the IEC, prohibiting government employees from using their public office to campaign for candidates in the upcoming local, municipal and governorate councils due in mid-August. In a statement circulated to public institutions, Mulki cited the relevant executive instructions that prohibit senior government officials from exploiting their positions or using public assets for campaigning purposes. Separately, the IEC Chief Commissioner Khalal said it is most likely that both the new Smart ID card as well as the old but valid ID would be used for the local, municipal and governorate council elections. Out of 4 million eligible voters, Khalal said only 1 million people have so far obtained the Smart card, voicing doubt that all would manage to issue the new ID by election day. Two agreements worth $1.6 billion were signed between the Jordan Petroleum Refinery Company and two U.S. oil companies specialized in refinery designs. The Prime Minister as well as the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources witnessed the signing of the two deals that will kickstart the fourth phase of the Jordan Refinery expansion plan. Jordan Petroleum Refinery Chief Executive Officer Abdel Karim Alaween signed the agreements for the Jordanian side, while Honeywell UOP President Rebecca Libert and KBR Deputy President Douglas Kelly inked the documents for the U.S. side. The Jordan Refinery expansion works will serve to increase profitability, upgrade the quality of products, and contribute to environmental protection. Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud welcomed Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi at the King Salman Air Base in Riyadh for talks on bilateral ties as well as regional developments. Al-Sisi was also welcomed by Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and other Saudi officials and ministers. Al-Sisi arrived in Riyadh today, leading a delegation of senior Egyptian officials. In Iraq, 3 policemen were killed in a suicide attack south of Mosul, where the Iraqi army is battling Daesh terrorists out of the city. A group of about 10 assailants, 3 of whom were killed in the attack, tried to infiltrate a federal police helicopter base in the city in the first major attack targeting government forces in this area since the Iraqi army regained territory from the group in February. And as the fighting for Mosul continues, hundreds of civilians continue to flee the western side of the city, while others return to areas freed from Daesh control. Families are making the journey under the sound of heavy mortar, artillery and machine gun fire as Iraqi forces battle Daesh some 2 kilometers away. Once they reach a government checkpoint, the men are placed in army trucks and sent for security screening to ensure no terrorist sleeper cells get out of the city. Moving to Syria, and building on recent strategic gains, the army and allied forces advanced against rebels in the west near Hama city. A military official said the army captured the town of Halfaya and nearby villages, taking back territory that rebels seized last year. The army began advancing into areas near Halfaya after the withdrawal of rebels today, following intense battles and airstrikes. This week, forces have pushed into rebel areas north of Hama, expanding their control along the western Damascus-Aleppo highway and reversing most gains made by the rebels last month. Elsewhere in Syria, the National Defense Forces, the NDF, said an Israeli attack on a military base in southern province of Qnitra killed 3 members of the force. The Israeli military made no comment on the reports, but the NDF said the attack struck its military camp in the countryside of Qnitra, which sits near the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Meanwhile, and while the hopes of many Syrians have been shattered by the country's civil war, some Syrians have not allowed the tragic conditions to hinder their dreams. Anas Abu Jawad is one of them. Once a football player with Al-Wahda, a top Syrian team, and also enjoyed a stint playing in Cyprus, Anas's career went off course when the civil war broke out in his homeland. After living in Egypt and taking coaching courses, Anas worked as a youth coach in several academies. He then established a football academy for Syrian refugees named Syrian Stars Academy, which offers young Syrians opportunities they otherwise would never have. In 2 years' time, the number of players has increased from just a dozen to over 500. Yet, despite his great success, Anas misses home.
If you now tell me to go back to Syria, I will run back with my short and shot, nothing else. Egypt and the Egyptians have been great to us, but being in your own home is another feeling.
I wish to play for Zamalek here in Egypt, with players like Mustafa Fatehi, Ayman Hefni and Shikabala, and my dream is to play for Barcelona. Here in Egypt, I don't feel like a stranger at all. We're treated very well as if we're at home. The people are so friendly, they like us and help us a lot. It's as if we're brothers.
Centrist Emmanuel Macron and far-right leader Marine Le Pen are set to face each other in a May 7 runoff for the French presidency after coming first and second in today's first round of voting. In a race that was too close to call to the last minute, Macron, a pro-European Union ex-banker and economy minister, was projected to get 24% by the pollster Harris and 23.7% by Elade. Le Pen, a leader of the anti-immigration and anti-EU National Front, was given 22% by both institutes. Turnout by the evening was at 69.42% compared to 70.59% in 2012, as voters cast their ballots in the first election in the country's modern history to take place under a state of emergency. Over 50,000 police and 7,000 soldiers, backed by rapid response units, patrolled the streets of the capital, Paris. People around the world are watching the election as a litmus test of just how influential the strains of populism and nationalism in Europe have become. North Korea says it is ready to sink a U.S. aircraft carrier to demonstrate its military might as two Japanese Navy ships joined a U.S. carrier group for exercises in the Western Pacific. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group to sail to waters off the Korean peninsula in response to rising tension over the North's nuclear and missile tests and its threats to attack the U.S. and its Asian allies. But the North remained unmoved, with the country's state-run television and newspapers saying that North Korea's revolutionary forces are combat-ready to sink a U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier with a single strike. Meanwhile, and adding to the existing tension, Pyongyang detained a Korean-American man in his 50s 2 days ago, bringing the total number of U.S. citizens held in the country to 3. Washington, D.C. has seen lots of large crowds rallying for or against one case after another, but yesterday the U.S. Capitol saw an unusual crowd of scientists by the thousands. These scientists were rallying between National Mall and Capitol Hill in protest against Donald Trump's proposal to sharply cut federal science and research budgets and his administration's skepticism about climate change and the need to slow global warming. During the March for Science across cities in the U.S., demonstrators held placards with slogans such as "Don't hate, educate," "There is no planet B," and "Science makes America great," as they sought to promote greater understanding of science. The protest, one of many that took place in cities across the world, coincided with Earth Day.
A real deep concern that science, the practice of science, is under threat.
And we're not just nerds sitting in a laboratory somewhere. We want to make change, and we want to make our world a better place.
And we go to sports, and Rafael Nadal claimed a record-extending 10th Monte Carlo Masters title as he geared up for his beloved French Open following a 2-set victory against fellow Spaniard Albert Ramos Vinolas. The 4th seed was in command from start to finish. The 14th times Grand Slam champion, who is also targeting a 10th Roland Garros trophy this year, completed the match with a 6-1, 6-3 victory. Spearheading a campaign called Heads Together that encourages people to open up about mental illness and seek help, Britain's young royals cheered London Marathon runners. Prince William, his wife Kate, and young brother Prince Harry handed water to the competitors and high-fived the runners. At the end of the marathon, the royals distributed medals to those crossing the finish line. Dalian Wanjiro and Ameri Kitani won the marathon. And finally, relatively cold weather prevails for the rest of tonight with partly cloudy skies and northwesterly light to moderate winds. Another drop in temperature is in the forecast for tomorrow with a high of 18 degrees Celsius in Amman, while winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk. The Gulf of Aqaba can enjoy moderate spring conditions with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. A cabinet decision approves amendments to the Penal Code, repealing the controversial Article 308, under which rapists would walk free provided they marry their victims. Centrist Emmanuel Macron and far-right leader Marine Le Pen are set to face each other in a May 7 runoff for the French presidency after leading the first round of voting. And North Korea says it is ready to sink a U.S. aircraft carrier to demonstrate its military might as two Japanese Navy ships join a U.S. carrier group for exercises in the Western Pacific. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.